Hello, and welcome to another episode of Break the Cycle with me, your host, Joshua Smith. I hope everyone's having a wonderful Thursday night. We were going to do a show on Tuesday. Again, something came up, and so we were not able to do the Tuesday show. Promise you, we're going to end up having 2 shows a week soon. It's definitely in the works. I promise you guys. But we got a great show for you tonight. And really, you know, this should have been the only show for the week. It's a great show. I'm very excited to have it. Anyways, we're also working on some internet issues, and I got that fixed today, so our internet's running much faster. We're not dropping any frames anymore, and I believe going forward, hopefully by next week, I will have it set up so that we can stream to Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, Facebook, and YouTube.
Right, we need to test the frame dropping thing. Israel.
Oh yeah, as soon as we start saying Israel, we're going to start dropping frames every time, man. Yeah, no shit. Zionism. Nope, no frames dropped. We're doing okay here tonight. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, it does seem like every time we have a show where Israel comes up at all, we start dropping frames. I don't know why. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but guys,
I'm not saying it's not a conspiracy.
Before we get too far into this stuff, go check out toplobster.com. The man, the myth, the legend, my good friend and partner on Break the Cycle. We can get all kinds of great backpacks, hats, hoodies, leggings. You can get your own custom Break the Cycle couch pillow for your couch streams at home. You can use BTC at checkout for a 10% discount, or you can join the Patreon, subscribe star, become a member of the YouTube channel under all of our links by hitting the join button, where you can get into a private Discord server and get some of Top's new gear 2 weeks before it goes to the general public at a 30% discount. Great stuff. You're helping out all kinds of different independent artists, and it's a good spot. Yeah, it's a good spot. Ryan, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a pretty eventful week, but
how's the baby?
He's doing really
good?
well. Yeah,
we're still proud of you on the show.
He's crying. He's at a phase right now where he does not like to be set down, except for on it. We can distract him for a little bit on his little play mat. He likes that thing, but his bassinet is an absolute no-go right now.
Oh yeah, that's Rocco was like that for a long time. Now he'll only sleep in the I don't know, the plug and play or pack and play or whatever they call it, but the baby will not. But we need to get you. We're going to bully you into making more children now. You have to continue to procreate. One isn't enough. One isn't enough. You got to.
We've already started this train.
Okay, good. I'm proud of you.
I grew up with siblings, and we were all about 18 months apart. I know how awesome it is to have kids, like siblings that are close to you.
You got to give your kids best friends, but more importantly, you have to populate the world with based children that can think for themselves and don't have to rely on a central government. Because when we do that, we start to chip away at the system, right? Anyways, guys, we got a great show for you tonight. Thank you, Base Drew, for the $1.99 super chat. He says, "I'm just here to give you more money." We appreciate it. The more money you give us, the more shows we can do. That's how it works. We got a great show for you guys tonight. I'm very excited. This man is the host of the Orin McIntyre show on the Blaze. He is Mr. Orin McIntyre. Sir, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I think it was somebody else on Twitter actually tagged him. It's like, you should have him on. And I was like, hell yeah, I would have him on, man. That would be great. I'd be stoked to do that. But before we get into like all the topics that we have picked out tonight, because we do have some cool topics picked out, and of course there's a lot going on in the world. We got this interview with Tucker and Putin that I actually got to watch about half of before the show. I tried to finish it all, but I was trying to feed 5 kids and get the internet taken care of. The internet guys were here literally till 10 minutes before we started the show. And then we also have Gina Carano's lawsuit against Disney.
Yeah, Will Wheaton having an emotional breakdown about
Will Wheaton having an emotional breakdown about Elmo being assaulted, because that's hilarious. That shows how weak and effeminate some of these grown men are today. And what else? What else were we going to talk about?
I had one other thing.
I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah.
But before we get too far into that.
Biden basically being deemed not competent to stand trial.
Competent enough to run the country. Not competent enough to stand trial. Before we get into that, Orin, why don't you tell us how you got to these views that you espouse on your show and this kind of like based cultural attitude that you have these days, my friend? How did you get here?
Yeah, man, it was definitely a weird journey. I started out as a basic, I guess, talk radio conservative, neocon adjacent type, kid, just listening to that kind of stuff growing up. And I ended up working a little bit in Republican politics. I ended up teaching some, and I became a political reporter. for a little while, just in my local papers, nothing huge. But while that was going on, I started noticing, things don't really work the way I'd learned about them. I started kind of seeing behind the scenes a little bit. And then when 2020 hit and just everything went nuts, I was like, okay, something very strange is going on. Nothing I learned about politics actually works. Constitution doesn't function the way that I was told it was. What's going on? And so I started looking into a lot of guys who had kind of different thoughts, political theorists and philosophers that I'd never heard of, even though I went to school for political theory.
Shocking how you don't hear about those guys in political theory.
Yeah,
Right?
surprise, surprise. And so just kind of fell down, some YouTube rabbit holes and then some reading rabbit holes until started learning a lot about what people call like neo-reactionary theory or Italian elite theory, political realism. And I was making YouTube videos as I was doing that because I was like, well, I'm relatively good at explaining things to people. I'll explain what I'm learning, and that went well, and here we are.
Nice. Who would you say are some of your biggest influences as far as these political theorists and philosophers go these days?
Well, I definitely, Curtis Yarvin was kind of my gateway to understanding a lot of these guys that I had never really interacted with. And after kind of reading his stuff, I read Nick Land, and then that spreads you into a lot of different people, Hans Hermann Hoppe, and then people like James Burnham and Gaetano Mosca and Wilfredo Pareto and McKells and all these people. And so Bertrand de Juvenal is probably another one that I think is key. Mostly, if for no other reason than that's the entire Hoppe lifts his entire understanding of power, his entire metaphysics of power off of Bertrand de Juvenal. So
Sure. I think it's kind of funny. I feel like some people, for a lot of people, that was backwards. Like a lot of people find Hoppe first and then Curtis Yarvin. That's how I feel about it. I don't know.
I have.
You don't know who either of those people are.
I've heard of Curtis Yarvin, and then from that list, Hoppe. That's the whole.
Have you read Hoppe yet? Have we?
Yeah, I read the Democracy that.
The God That Failed.
Yeah, the God That Failed.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a great book.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
I'm glad that you've done some. I really got into Hoppe probably like 2 years ago. Prior to that, I was just strictly a Rothbard guy, and then I got to really figure out that Hoppe kind of expanded on all those ideas to a degree that I didn't expect, and it was great. It was really good. It absolutely. Like I always tell people that Rothbard was like opening a window and climbing through it and then it shutting behind you. Like you could never get back through that window. It totally changed my entire life. But Hoppe was like a whole nother window, right? It was like a whole nother window and a whole nother house. But anyways, that's pretty cool for you. How did you get hooked up with the Blaze, man? How did you end up working with them guys?
Just dumb luck and some hard work. I ended up doing well on Twitter. I never expected that to be the case. I started a Twitter account because people told me that's where you should post your YouTube stuff so people can find it. And then I ended up doing well on Twitter, having larger accounts share my stuff out on a regular basis, and ended up on Timcast and some Daily Wire spots and stuff, and then eventually some Blaze shows, and eventually the head of the Blaze was like, "Hey, I like seeing you on our shows," and ended up doing what I'm doing now.
Maybe that's what Timcast did with me. That was the other night was my third time on Timcast. You know what I mean? That's a lot.
That is, yeah.
That's pretty low. I feel like Tim doesn't hate me if I've been on there 3 times. You know what I mean? And me and Tim don't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff because Tim's still got some of these neocon leanings. You know what I mean? Like especially when it comes to like Israel and Palestine and maybe not so much on the Russia-Ukraine thing, which is nice. And I feel like he's pretty good on the rest of the Middle East. It's just like that it's kind of like that one neocon vice. It's like we can't let go of this one because it's the Holy Land, and we're what I mean. And but I feel like he's kind of coming around. For me, I'm almost people are like, oh, you're an isolationist. I'm like, well, if that's what you want to call me, I don't give a shit. I'm just I think that I'm tired of us wasting a third of the national budget on fighting wars we shouldn't be a part of, and that's really where I deviated from one of the ways that I deviated from the Republican Party, because I worked for the Republican Party from 2007 to 2012.
That was the big one for me, where I was like, well, that and currency printing.
Well, it was Ron Paul that did it for me.
Yeah,
because I worked on Ron Paul's campaign in 2008 in California, which is tough shit, by the way.
Yeah, I was 13.
Yeah, and so I watched them arresting caucus delegates at caucuses, and I watched them change the national convention rules and shit to keep him out. So it was like I was kind of like, well, I'm a little further right than these people, I think. So it's kind of time to move on. So do you still work in politics, or do you political commentating solely? I mean, do you do anything other than that at this point?
No, this is my full-time job now.
Yeah,
I was,
dude.
but
Love
no,
that.
I was teaching high school before this, so
Wow.
it's been quite the change. Yeah.
Someone in the chat said, "You Catholic sons of mothers are streaming while the Putin interview is dropping." We'll talk about the Putin interview, but it dropped. You've already had enough time to watch it since it dropped. If you didn't pick it up and put it on the second it came on, like I did, I don't know.
I only started listening because you told me we would be talking.
I don't know what to
tonight.
tell you, man. But I will say this: so let's talk a little bit about the culture surrounding this thing. It's absolutely insane. Okay, like I've never in my life seen a journalist get raked over the coals the way that Tucker's getting raked over the coals for interviewing anybody. I mean, listen, in 1938, Hitler was Time Man of the Year. Okay. And I'm not making this up. This is true shit. Okay?
Yeah, I know.
We have had people go over and interview. No one goes after what's the basketball player's name that's friends with Kim Jong-un?
Dennis
Rodman, right? Like nobody goes after Dennis Rodman for being friends with Kim Jong-un and going over there and trying to talk peace or hanging out with the guy, right? They play basketball and shit together. You know what I mean?
But that's also because like Dennis Rodman wore a wedding dress to a Bulls game in the 90s.
Well, and he's also a black guy, so like you can't drag him through the coals for doing that kind of stuff, right?
I mean, he's been in a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, so
yeah, exactly, right? And so like, but like this isn't the first time that Putin's been interviewed either, right? But now, and all of a sudden, and so here's the thing. For me, it's like I watched at the beginning of this war when Putin came out, and we talked about it a lot on the show. But Putin came out and was like, we're not gonna cuck to the West and their demands for us to gayify this country. Like it's just not going to happen. He's also talked about like withdrawing from the central bank, IMF, all this shit, like just totally staying away from the culture that, United States and Britain is breeding and trying to spread around the world. I mean, this started 100 years ago when the U.S. decided we were the arbiters of democracy and had to spread the ideals of democracy around the world to make the world a better place. And it's grown into, and we see why democracy is such a poisonous snake, right? Because it's grown into now we have to gayify and make everybody effeminate, and it's just absolutely terrible to see. But that's, Russia is not gonna do that shit, right? And so like he came out and made this whole speech about how we're not gonna bend to the will of the rest of the West, telling us that we have to do these things and we have to become, effeminate like you and make everybody submit, and like we're not going to do that. And so like I knew right then that they were going to push this thing farther because of that, period. And then nobody, CNN's coming out, Fox is coming out, all these people are coming out saying, oh well, we've been trying to get an interview with Putin. So out of one side of your mouth you're saying you've been trying to get an interview with Putin. But now you're going to rake Tucker Carlson through the coals for getting an interview with Putin.
Well, because the state propaganda apparatus is just upset that they don't get to go in and, take things out of context and do everything to push the narrative that he is a bad guy. Like they wanted an interview where the only outcome could be that he's horrible,
right,
and that there was no rational justification for any of his actions, and he's just a
tyrant that wants to attack Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
And then he starts the interview with like an hour of a history lesson on the region. I mean, and he's like, I can show you all the paperwork.
He brought the documents with him.
Brought the documents, dude. And I felt bad for Tucker because Tucker knows that, audiences in the United States are so stupid, right? For the most part, they're not going to want to listen to this, right? And he's like trying to hurry him along in this history lesson. And Putin's getting upset. He's like, I need to explain this. I need to explain why Ukraine is Ukraine today to even start to give you an idea of why we want this region. You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you feel about this cultural tirade that people are going on right now, Orin?
It's certainly pretty wild. I mean, it's very clear that it was necessary to cast this war from the beginning in a particular light. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're in Ukraine and you don't want this to happen, obviously this is terrible. And is Putin a good guy? Probably not. Most world leaders aren't. I know he's done some bad things for sure, some terrible things for sure. But it's also this idea that there's no other spheres of sovereignty. All geopolitical issues are based on this kind of hegemonic US idea of human rights, and this gives you costs a spell to kind of go in at any moment. You can expand NATO up to the doorstep of the border of the person that was designed to fight, and expect them to do nothing. And if they challenge anything, then they're a threat to democracy, and they're probably trying to conquer the world. It's kind of the best trick in the world. If you conquer the world, just accuse everybody else of conquering the world, and then you don't have to be the bad guy, because anything they do is a challenge to your international order, which is a great euphemism for world empire. And so there's a very strange moment where America hasn't had really the idea that its kind of global dominance would be challenged, that anyone would stand up to it. That was a big question at the time when the original war begun. It was like, is the United States really going to be able to snuff this out? And it was very clear early on the administration believed that it would be able to flex its soft power, because that's all we do now, right? We've got carrier groups and they're great, but we're not going to commit them to this kind of thing right away, because that's how you actually get a hot nuclear war.
Right.
And so you're going to flex your soft power, and you're going to shut down the banking, and you're going to shut down the oil sales and everything, and their economy is just going to collapse. And we've got Fox style governments, as Wilfredo Pareto would call it. We've got these type 1 residues. They're the ones that want to manipulate everything. They don't really know how to fight wars. They don't really know how to execute violence. And so their plan is to basically just manipulate all of these soft systems that they've wrapped the world in. The more you can interconnect things, the more you can manipulate them. The problem is, like, they forgot that when you do that and you make yourself interdependent with these nations, if you try to push back on them, they can push back through economic forces as well. And even though we were supposed to, remember Biden, bragging that we were going to collapse the Russian currency and the economy and everything within 3 months and the war would be over. And instead, American oil prices spiked and our inflation went out of control, and Putin started acquiring people who were willing to go off the petrodollar in order to buy his energy. And it all just kind of backfired. And it became pretty clear that while the US was more than willing to fight to the last Ukrainian, they weren't actually going to get involved in this thing. And
oh my God, that's the best term I've heard on here. The U.S. is willing to fight till the last Ukrainian. I like that. That's good.
Yeah, but I mean, so I think it's understandable that they don't want Putin, justification out there, because we have this really short idea of the nation state, and we don't understand our own form of government, our own idea of the nation state, much less more ancient understandings of kingdoms and regional peoples and these kind of things. And this is why, it's hard for a lot of people to grasp the actual tensions that are happening in Ukraine. And whether you agree with Putin's, assertion that historically this section of Ukraine is part of his country, his reasoning is pretty close to what a lot of people throughout history understood. Now, is he exploiting it purely for aggression or advantage? Could be, absolutely could be. But they certainly don't want any of that message getting out. And so this is why they were apoplectic when Tucker showed up over there, because really, we're not supposed to hear the other side of this story. There's only one story, and it's that Vladimir Putin is actually a secret fascist reincarnation of Hitler, and he's trying to conquer the world. That's the only acceptable storyline.
So what's ironic is one of the last lines that I listened to in the interview was Putin saying that their goal will be accomplished when they stomp out all of the neo-Nazis in Ukraine.
Yeah. He constantly calls them neo-Nazis, which is funny.
There are.
Yeah, there really are. There really are neo-Nazis there. But I kind of came to this realization the other day. So like people online kept talking about, oh yeah, Ukraine is kicking Russia's ass. And I knew that wasn't true. I think most of us knew that wasn't true. I think anybody that with half a brain, even the people that were saying it, some of the people that were saying it knew they were lying to themselves. I mean, Russia is one of the biggest military strengths in the entire world. Mm-hmm. Ukraine never stood a chance. And then all of a sudden they put out this call on Twitter and Facebook, and it shows very clearly that they're conscripting women, the Ukrainian women, to fight in this war. And you can't say the health of a military is good when they're conscripting women to fight a war, right? And then this $60 billion, right, for Ukraine. It's like they're losing their shit over there, because it got voted down, right? And so you can't tell me that you're winning a war when you have to depend on $60 billion from the U.S. to even continue the war.
Another really telling moment to me in that interview was Putin talked about the U.S. I don't remember exactly what it was in regards to, but he said they spent $5 billion or something. That's a ton of money.
Right.
And I was like, I don't blink at $5 billion anymore.
Yeah. No.
When it comes to like government
It's a
spending.
drop in the bucket compared to
Yeah.
36 trillion.
Yeah, we spend that on
deficit.
Pakistani gender studies every
Exactly. And so like, yeah, I agree with that. And I think that the historical, so like when he opens up with this historical like relevance, right? Like he starts at like in the 1600s, right? And like the
Didn't
people
he
who
started
look at,
with like the foundation of the Russian state.
Maybe
Yeah, he's starting in the 800s.
800.
oh, did he start in the 800s?
Yeah.
So,
He was like, that's kind of when the official Russian state happened.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah,
Well,
they're still sieging Byzantium. That's where he got.
Okay, so he starts a long time ago. Okay, when I started really mentally paying attention because I was trying to get kids fed and stuff, it was like 1653 or something like that. And I'm going. Nobody in America is going to understand the relevance of this because we
didn't exist in
it didn't exist
1653.
then. B, the people here have such a short attention span when it comes to history that they think, this Israel-Palestine thing started October 7th of this year or of last year, right? It's like the history doesn't matter to Americans, and that's why I was like kind of bummed out that that's how it started, because I'm like, nobody's going to care about that, like nobody at all, and it means so much to Russians who are like this proud like group of people, this proud nation that still believes in like their nation, and they have a government that still believes in their nation and wants their nation to be like the first thing they think about. Whether they're good at it or not, I'm not going to speculate on that. But we have a government here in the United States that shows us every day they hate us. They hate our history. They hate our culture. They don't want you. They want you completely replaced by whoever they want to flood the country with. I mean, it's gone like so far beyond like a conspiracy, right? Like I love it whenever somebody brings up like the Great Replacement or the Great Reset or the New World Order or any of these things, right? Where everybody's like, they start trying to shout you down right away. Conspiracy, conspiracy, conspiracy. And you're like, dude, the WEF is literally using these words right now. Right fucking now. They're using them right now in speeches. And you're calling me a conspiracy theorist? They're telling you they're doing it. You have a government that's showing you all the different angles of what those things we talk about look like every day through policy and nation building and all this stuff that they're doing right around the world, and the immigration stuff and warfare state, and they're showing you that they're doing the things that you're calling us a conspiracy theorist for talking about. And all you can think to do is shout conspiracy, conspiracy, conspiracy. And, so we have a government here that has to lie to us about a bunch of things to get things passed, because, there is a tight balance there. I think at some point, if they do too much out in the open, it's going to be volatile. There's going to be, problems. And I talk a lot about it on the show, like when I talk about the Civil War or, a revolution in the United States, I don't necessarily think that means that we're going to have AK-47s out there fighting the U.S. military. What I think it is it's already started through avenues like Bitcoin and avenues like 3D printing and avenues like, growing your own food and homesteading and like all this dumb shit that people take for granted. That's the real Civil War. That's the real, like, hey, I'm opting out of this fiat federal system, right? And so, like, I see that as the same thing as like Russia. Russia's like, no, we're not going to take part in your American nation building.
We're not going to be a
America.
part of the Pax Americana.
Yeah.
Because we're a global empire. It was
With a very rich history.
The terminology that Putin used in that interview is he referred to like some places in the Middle East and like Eastern Europe as satellite states of the United States.
I will say this though. So from what I understand, and someone just said it in the chat too, I haven't gotten to that part yet. Putin was straight up calling out the CIA, publicly calling out the CIA, and called out Tucker in the interview for wanting to join the CIA at one point, which is really, really crazy to think about. Do you think? What do you think the CIA is going to respond for that, Auron? What do you think?
I mean, obviously, the color revolutions that have been kind of omnipresent. I mean, that's where we got the Ukrainian government we have now in the first place.
Right.
Has been a big part of the kind of the global American empire. The things we're seeing now in the United States aren't unique. Russia went through this too. Stalin called this I believe, the ethnic problem, right? That they needed to dissolve all the particularities inside the Soviet Union. They needed to collapse basically all independence and all identity so that they could make everyone reliant on the imperial state. And, the United States, the problem that a lot of people have is they think that there's some clash between communism and capitalism or whatever, right? That this is kind of the story that we've been told. But James Burnham correctly identified the phenomenon that was occurring in the 1930s. He pointed to the fact that all of the states, whether they be, theoretically fascist or a liberal democracy or communist, had all fallen prey to the same thing, which was the managerialism that came after kind of the two industrial revolutions, and most importantly, probably the media revolution, the communications revolution that came after. And the mass democracy allowed states to mobilize their entire populations in ways that simply had not existed before. And because the ability to compel people was based on popular sovereignty, you had to find a way to control and manage the population's understanding of what was going on pretty much all the time. And so you needed these vast bureaucracies and these vast organizations designed to manage the minds of the populace. In Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia, we know what those were because there's a specific guy, Goebbels, or you have a specific Politburo, and that's their explicit job. In the United States, we didn't have an official state organ, and so we kind of had one ramshackle assembled through a process of melding together media organizations and government bureaucracies and these kind of things. But the central point is that all of these states needed to homogenize everybody. You needed rootless, cosmopolitan, homogenized masses in order to manage people at a wide scale. And so, the things that we are seeing the United States that do are things that Russia tried to do, and that things that China's going to have to do. And the reason that Vladimir Putin is talking about breaking away from the empire is that he wants sovereignty, but he's of course still interested in a Russian empire. If you read kind of his court vizier Alexander Dugin, he talks specifically about reestablishing a pan like a Eurasianism and a clash of civilizations model that allows for Russia to have its own extended sphere of global influence. So he's not trying to like reduce things down. He's simply trying to keep from being independent of the American state, but he has an interest in creating his own larger total state as well.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't think there's any denying that he's a power hungry tyrant in many, many aspects. And anybody, all these people that are always like, oh, you're a Russian bot or you're a Putin lover. I'm like, dude, no. I just think this whole war is dumb. And I think that supporting it from America is dumb, right? Like, and obviously I'm a blue collar working class guy, obviously have a military background, but I'm not like, I'm not the most intelligent person in the room. We talk about that a lot. Mm-hmm. I know what I'm talking about half the time, at least. But it's clear to me. It was just clear to me that, America and NATO were provoking this and had been provoking this for a long, long time. I think that's somewhere deep in some basement room and, that's locked away in the White House or in the Pentagon, there's a list. And that list has always said China, Russia, Iran. And I think that they've always wanted to push their fingers in the chest of these three nations. Iran is starting to look like a possibility again too. And I talked about this a lot on the show too. I said, this is the most dangerous time, in my opinion, foreign policy wise, in my lifetime, because we're knocking on the door of Taiwan, telling China for the first time since Nixon that we will go to war over Taiwan.
Well, that bill to give aid to Ukraine and Israel also included Taiwan.
Right.
That's right.
So we are explicitly backing them now.
Yes. And so we're knocking on the door of China with Taiwan, okay, which is a fucking tripwire to war with China.
China wants it.
Well, of course they want it.
They got 30 million young single men without.
Right. And it's so crazy to me because we're telling China, no, you can't have your rogue province back. Right. And at the same time, we're we're telling Ukraine that they can have their rogue province back, right? I mean, it's like the most hypocritical foreign policy bullshit I've ever seen in my life. But the fact of the matter is that we're knocking on the door of China, we're knocking on the door of Russia, and we're definitely knocking on the door of Iran right now, and we're bombing Iraq again, Syria, Yemen, like all of these places, and it's like we're gonna spread ourselves so thin and start a world war with three like superpowers, like military powers that are huge. I mean, between what we're talking like a third of the world's population in Russia and China alone, or so. I mean, it's insane. It's an absolutely insane amount of people, and then Iran as well, which has the backing of, I mean, I don't know how many Middle Eastern countries, a lot, right? So like, this is a scary time foreign policy wise, and I don't think people understand that. And we have people like Lindsey Graham, who, I don't know if Lindsey has any kids.
He does not.
I didn't think so. But those are the kind of people that are pushing for war, right? This childless fucking man-child baby, right? Who doesn't care about the future of our country and our nation, right? That's been sitting in Congress, or sitting in the House for, God, how long? How long has he been sitting in the Capitol?
Probably longer than I've been alive.
It's been a long time, right? People like fucking Mitch McConnell, who, for all intents and purposes, may be running on pure adrenochrome at this point. Okay. And Joe Biden, like, these are the people that are leading us into a war that could easily turn into a world war. And they don't give a shit about our kids, right? They don't give a shit about our future as a nation. Like, they hate us. They want you sick and fat and nearly dead, if not all the way dead, right? Like, they hate us. And we have to sit here and watch these people foist us into all of these conflicts around the world. And now three of the biggest like powers in the world at the same time. And we have a whole, you know, these like crazy ass like team sport parties in the United States that don't really understand what's going on, but they're just going to fight each other anyways because, you know, their party told them that this is important. And it's like, sit down, shut the fuck up, and think about what is going on in the world right now and what that means to the future of your nation, your family, your job, your economics. Like, all of this stuff is going to be affected to a point where, you know, we'll be very lucky if this empire here in the United States lasts much longer. You know what I mean? At the rate we're headed. I don't know. What do you think, Orin, about the American empire? You think we're close to a collapse? You think that this will definitely push us over the edge? If we're not, I don't know.
Well, the quote is that there's a lot of ruin in a nation. And unfortunately, I think that's probably a safe bet. I would say that what we're seeing right now is probably our leaders running into the apex, or they're on figuring out they're on the backside of the apex of like a possible global power. There's only so far that I think kind of social organization can stretch, and I think we hit it. And so there are leaders who have felt pretty much invincible since 1945 are slowly learning that there is actually an outer limit to their power, but they're still not used to it. Like, they're still used to just being able to, you know, tell everybody like, well, you know, you do what you want or we'll just completely flatten you. And so they even though they are starting to feel uncomfortable, they're starting to notice that, you know, things aren't holding together the way they used to. We don't seem to be able to project power the same way. We don't seem to be able to manipulate the media the same way. We don't seem to be able to keep the steady flow of income and, you know, GDP and life expectancies kind of taking a dive and all these things. Yeah, these aren't good signs, but, you know, we're still the kings of the universe. We're still the anointed ruling class of the entire globe, and so we should probably be able to continue to do this. And you can tell because, like, you look at the kind of the COVID thing, and you're like, well, obviously these people stretch their power to the limit, right? Like, you had global governance kind of stretching itself, and all of these different countries, you know, were imprisoning their people and stealing their bank accounts and all kinds of crazy stuff. And so there was a lot of tension. You think after that, these people would like take a break for a little while, but no, they immediately go in, you know, we got to go to war in Ukraine, and then we need to go to war in Israel, and then we need to go to war in, you know, with Iran, and we need and it just becomes very clear that these people still feel invincible. They only know how to rule this way. All the like quality was drained out of our ruling class for the last few decades. We've kind of stacked this bio-Leninist monstrosity. And so what we've ended up with is a bunch of people who inherited an empire, inherited a ruling machine, but they don't know how to operate it. They don't know how to maintain it. And so they're, it's like a kid who's driving a car that they can't upkeep, and they're just, grinding those last few miles out, and they've never changed oil, and they don't know why the engine keeps making that knocking sound, but they're not going to stop going 85 on the highway until the whole thing just explodes. And I think that's pretty much where we are. How long will it take for that to happen? It's a good question. I'm not sure, but it's very clear that these countries are testing the American empire for a reason right now. They can smell that fear.
Yeah, it's wild, man.
Yeah.
I do believe that it's like it's not even just that we're just spread so thin, it's that the country's been so used to exerting their power anywhere they want it for so long that they've gotten, it's like we're the youngest nation in America, or in the world, right? We're like the rebellious teenagers, right? And we have all this power, and we're telling everybody else that we control them now. And it's like at some point, someone's going to smack you.
We're the young hip empire. I think South Sudan is the youngest country in the world because that was founded in 2016.
That's fine. Okay.
But
yeah,
we're
you know
the
what
young
I mean.
hip, we're the young hip new empire, and we don't realize that the times are changing, and saying like rad and whatnot is
someone's
no
gonna
longer
someone's
cool.
gonna smack us, dude.
Yeah.
Like somebody, I got a 12-year-old who comes home and he's like, bruh, like, don't say bruh. You know what I mean? You're smarter than that. You're in GT classes. You're in gate classes. You're smarter than that. Don't say bruh. All right, bruh. That's sussy, bruh. And I'm like, all right, listen to me, man. I'm not gonna smack you, but you're not gonna sit on your phone anymore. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're kind of becoming a nation that acts like that. And we've become a godless nation. I mean, very
absolutely.
fast, and the morals have gone out the window, and it's getting so terrible that I think people just don't realize the implications of what they're going on. You're gonna say something, Warren?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, we've taken everything that high civilization was built on top of, and we've knocked it all out. It's like the Jenga tower, right? Like, if you want to get it so high, you have to start taking pieces out, and eventually you take them lower and lower to the base until it becomes unstable and falls over. And that's what we did. Like, we're like, oh well, we can get a little more GDP if we just wreck the family a little harder. Well, we could probably squeeze out a little more production if we just make sure everything's open on Sunday and nobody's able to go to church. Well, we could probably go ahead and spread our power a little thinner if we go ahead and change the definition of what a man or woman is across the entire globe, and eventually you're just creating a society that's unsustainable. It's not a surprise that all of these different functions are falling apart, but of course the entire ruling classes ideology was based on the idea that deconstructing these things was an unmitigated good. They can't agree now that actually those things are fundamental to the stable nation and a prosperous nation. There's no way they can admit that, and so the only thing they can do is just keep screaming something about racism and human rights until they've realized that everybody they're recruiting was only there because they checked the right gender or ethnic boxes and has no actual ability to do their job. We can't land planes, we can't get just in time delivery, supply chains fall apart, and all of a sudden this nation that looked invincible because it wielded this unprecedented military and economic power that allowed it to project its culture into every corner of the globe, all of a sudden it can't do basic first world things.
Sure. Which brings me back to my original point here. If we had sent a black man in a dress that identifies as a woman to interview Putin, nobody would have cared. Nobody would have cared. It's it's the same DEI mentality, dude. It's crazy. It blows my mind. Or a Hispanic woman that calls herself a man and dresses in a suit. It doesn't matter. It's just like this whole DEI mindset. And so because the white conservative Christian, I think Tucker's Christian. I don't think he's Catholic.
He's Episcopalian.
Is he Episcopalian? Okay. I knew he wasn't
Catholic.
Catholic. I'm not Catholic either. Someone brought up that I was
he
Catholic
doesn't eat
earlier.
fish.
I'm Orthodox. Huh?
He doesn't eat fish.
Yeah, okay. So
that's a pescatarian.
Yeah, pescatarian.
Yeah, I was
it's
gonna
real
say
close.
that's a different thing.
But I'm just saying it's crazy because the white dorky guy in the dad shoes like shows up to interview Putin, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh my god, he's literally Hitler.
Well, it's because he broke. Part of it is because he broke from the kind of media empire.
Well, he gets like 4 times the amount of views on his show on Twitter, just on Twitter, than the entire Fox News networks does daily.
He can't be controlled anymore.
Yeah. Oh, no.
He has a platform now
that
they can't just
and Elon told him
remove
he can do
him
whatever
from
he wants.
or just shame him from. And yeah, you had these two people that have broken off.
I want to know why everyone's so racist against the guy from Africa, Elon Musk. That doesn't make any sense to me.
One point I wanted to bring up is our elite are so stupid because they chose.
Are they stupid or are they nefarious?
No. They have to be. Listen to the point, and you'll understand why they're so stupid. Because they chose to villainize the two things that they primarily villainize, in my eyes, are oil and women being mothers.
Sure.
Those are probably two of the most important things for modern society to function. And they're like, yeah, let's destroy those things that modern society can't live without.
But there's a reason they targeted those. So those aren't mistakes. Like those are that's a target for a reason. So the reason you pick those two, you pick the oil because you're going to have a declining society. So the in order to make people more dependent on the state, you need to remove any remaining kind of regional bourgeoisie independence, which means you need to get rid of cheap energy and private transportation. Like those are huge problems for a state that wants to centrally manage everything. The reason that you villainize a normal family is that you want to make sure that the state is the only one with the authority to govern children. Like families are a natural barrier to the total state. They're they're the final organic barrier to state power. State power is never restrained by constitutions or voting or any of that thing. It's only ever constrained by other competing social spheres, and the family is the ultimate resilient social sphere. So if you want to make people reliant on the state, then you need to go ahead and get rid of those family bonds. You need to get rid of fathers out of the household. You need to make mothers entirely dependent on the state for any continuation. Now that's short-sighted eventually, because like you're probably thinking, well, eventually they'll become weak and they'll run out of people and productivity and all those things. And yeah, that's true, but they didn't think there was a trade-off, because their ideology taught them that the acquisition of power was the only value, and that everything they were doing to dismantle tradition was valuable in and of itself. And so they didn't think that this is all progress. None of this could ever have any kind of quantifiable trade-off. These systems were all simply evil and patriarchal and whatever, and those things are that's why they existed. And so those choices, well, we can see them now as, oh well, this is going to weaken you over time, okay, but those choices were made for a very specific reason. Those weren't accidents. They were necessary dismantlings of critical prior social and economic bonds that had to occur if you were going to grow the state to its current level.
Sure. And I talk a lot about that. I actually talk about that in my presidential campaign quite a bit, because one of the main tenets of my platform is the ending of Title 40 of the Social Security Act, which signed into law in 1975 by President Ford. Actually, the federal government is paying the states. They're subsidizing the states to separate families in family law court. This is literally something that's been going on since 1975. And in that time, we went from 1 in 60 children living in a fatherless home to 1 in 4 just since 1975. And if you look at the stats around this, the youth violent offender category has tenfolded. Homeless and runaway youth, high school dropouts, mass shooters, 92% from fatherless homes. Like, it's created such an ill society, like a socially demented society. And nobody talks about it. There's a couple people out there talk about fathers' rights. I mean, I think Larry Elder brings it up quite a bit when he was, but they stifle his speech quite a bit on all kinds of things. But it's if I had to pick one thing that has degraded society more than OnlyFans culture, right, which I talk about a lot as well, it's definitely the fatherless home thing. And that was created entirely by our government. It really was, through no fault divorce, of course, but then also Title 40 of the Social Security Act.
And then probably a contributing factor to it as well would be the proliferation of the birth control pill, which came out in 1971. So the fundamental transaction and risk evaluation around sex for women dramatically shifted for the first time in human history.
And then
I don't think it gets talked about basically at all. And I think it's one of the most consequential things of the 21st century.
Even if the birth control pill doesn't work, there's a abortion clinic on every corner in America that will do these abortions. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that the risk reward thing kind of went out the window. But man, it's just like this. And I talked about, I talk a lot obviously about Yuri Bezmenov on the show as well, and how, he kind of came over here when he defected from KGB in Russia or Soviet Union and said, hey, the communists are already here. They're already infiltrating all of your facets of society, right? Your schools, your, well, now we would call them social media companies, your hospitals, your churches. And we look around right now. And I talk a lot about the church right up the street from my house that has a rainbow flag hanging huge on the front, like right on the front of the church. And I go, that's, that makes a lot of sense that, the communists have always had to attack first faith. I think that's a big one. They had to attack faith, and they had to attack the strong family unit, because when you have those two things in your life, it makes you like way less dependent on a centralized federal government or any kind of government for that matter. And so like the communists have always had to go to war. And I got in this conversation on Twitter the other day with somebody saying, oh yeah, well, what about the Orthodox Christians? And I'm like, yeah, what about the fucking Orthodox Christians, dude? Do you know anything about the history of Orthodox in Russia and how they were literally excommunicated and murdered by the revolutionaries because of their Christian faith? And I used to have, a lot of people know that long before Julia, I had an Orthodox Russian girlfriend for 3 years whose family lives in Alaska in a little tiny town that they built called Nikolaevsk or some shit, right? Like out way on the Kenai Peninsula, like out in the middle of nowhere. They built this. It's one street with a church at the end. They stated themselves. They still have Russian accents, dude. The kids born here have Russian accents. Okay, they live in Alaska. There's also a lot of these communities in the Pacific Northwest. Now, if you ask them where they came from, almost all of them unanimously will tell you that they came from South America. Okay, they were in South America because when they were excommunicated from Russia, they had to go to China. And China was also a communist country who said, you have 1 year and then you have to leave here. And so they left there and went to South America. My ex-girlfriend's parents met in Argentina as ethnic, Orthodox, old world believer Russians. And then they moved up to Oregon and then eventually out to Alaska. So like anybody who's telling me that the Orthodox Russians were like part of the communist revolution or something has no idea what they're talking about. They were absolutely kicked out and thrown out of Russia because they knew that the Orthodox could live their own lives in their own communities away from everybody and didn't have to depend on the state. And so, I think that these two facets of society are the main targets of not just the communists, but any kind of like tyrant that wants a centralized control and to have like people rely on them. You can't do that when you have a strong faith-based, strong family unit, right? Like those people are like, oh, we don't really need you. What do you think, Orin? Are you Catholic? Did you say you were Catholic?
No, I'm Southern Baptist.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. But no, I agree. Like this is, if you look at, you don't have to read too hard into this. I mean, if you look at neo-Marxist literature, they regularly say things like, we need feminism to dismantle families so that we can eventually dismantle nations so that we can have the global, communist revolution. This right there. It's not hard to miss. There's a reason that, in the Spanish Civil War, the communists are, throwing priests off of, cliffs and raping nuns. This is the way, since the French Revolution before, this is how leftists behave. Like they understand that this is critical for the advancement of the kind of state that they want to live in.
Are you saying that Robespierre wasn't a good guy?
I'm going out on that limb.
Bold statements being made.
Yeah, bold statements. Bold statements. No, yeah, this whole thing's just crazy to me. And I don't know that this interview is going to change anything, but at least I know that 9 million people have already watched this interview, and there's going to be another 30 million that do over the next 24 hours probably. And I think that that's good. I think that's a good thing. Whether you agree with Putin or not, I think it's a good thing. I think you should go watch that interview. I think you should make up your own mind, and you should stop fucking listening to a government that has shown you repeatedly that they fucking hate you. They want you dead.
I think one thing it will do especially is highlight how much control the managerial class really has, because there are multiple instances where Putin talks to a president and then the CIA undermines that president.
Yeah.
And this happened with multiple presidents, and it's just like, the president might just be essentially what the Queen of England is.
Yeah, well, our president is undermining himself with dementia currently, and he recently, today, well, he's been going through this hearing for the secret documents case, which, by the way, they've dragged Trump through the coals over, and now they're very openly having this hearing for Biden, and all of a sudden the special counsel says actually he doesn't remember the years he was president.
Vice president.
He could not tell you within 2 years of when Bo died, his son died, and there were some other things too. So we're finding out now that either A, we know they're not lying. Okay, that's the thing. It's like a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to use this as his defense to not be found guilty or be punished for this stuff. But listen, it's not just being used for a defense. We have watched actively as this man has descended into dementia on the national stage for years at this point. So I don't think it's a rouse, right? Like, I don't think it's fake. It's pretty clear that the mental capacity of our current, president has been declining for quite some time. And I've said it, I said it 2 years ago. This feels like elder abuse. I feel like I'm watching elder abuse on TV right now. And whether it's because the adrenochrome supply dried up after Epstein didn't kill himself or not, I don't know. But I've been seeing this a lot more with the older politicians where their mental capacity is declining. Of course, we've seen it famously with Mitch McConnell and several others as well. But we're basically sitting on this fact now that we're telling America that Joe Biden doesn't have the mental capacity to be charged or convicted of these crimes, but also he has the mental capacity to be the president. And they're still talking about re-election. There's no way this guy makes it to a re-election. Maybe he makes it to a re-election. He's not making it after a re-election. So there's two possible outcomes here for me. I believe that they're going to use this as a way to say he's not running for re-election, and they're going to shoehorn Gavin Newsom in there. And let me tell you some people, as somebody from the state of California who grew up in the Bay Area, who used to enjoy skating down Market Street to the Embarcadero in San Francisco on a weekly basis on the weekend. It used to be a great city until they let Gavin Newsom have the keys. And I'm not saying it was a perfect city. Every big city has their problems, but I'll tell you, it was a lot safer. It was a lot cleaner. It was a lot cheaper to live there, to hang out there, to do business there, to shop there. All of it was much better before Gavin Newsom. He came in and turned it into a literal poo map, okay? He's the reason. He's the one that made it legal to poop all over the streets. Nobody gets in trouble for it anymore. He's the reason you see heroin needles everywhere, okay? He's a big reason why the crime has gone, 500-fold to what it was even in the late 90s. Okay, and we're talking rapes, thefts, murders, all of it has skyrocketed in San Francisco because they're not prosecuting a ton of shit anymore. And so, in perfect California fashion, Gavin Newsom failed upwards. The state of California decided, well, San Francisco sucks now, but we should do it to the whole state. And I'm telling you, Democratic politicians love to fail upwards. And so I have this feeling that the Antichrist, as I like to call Gavin Newsom and several others, you guys know how I roll on this show, is going to be shoehorned in here somehow. Whether it's through a vice president or, Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom, or, they somehow get, Gavin Newsom ready when they have to take Joe Biden after they try to win the election, and then he becomes Kamala Harris's VP, or they just take Biden out entirely and put Newsom up as the new candidate. I think something like that is coming soon. Obviously within the next 9 or 10 months because of the election anyways, but prior to that, I think now they're going to start doing that. And a lot of people told me I was crazy thinking that it would be somebody like Newsom. But who else do you think it could be? I mean, besides Kamala Harris or Michelle Obama, who I don't think it would be. Big Mike's not going to be Big Mike.
The Democrats just don't have anyone up and coming that is remotely appealing to people. Their best option would be RFK, but they can't really control RFK. So what are they going to do? Roll out Pete Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom, Elizabeth Warren?
It can't be Buttigieg. Let me tell you, I as somebody who spent a lot of time in South Bend, not a lot of time, but several times in South Bend, and I know people that live in South Bend, they've all told me he was a horrible mayor, horrible mayor. That's why they put him on transportation, right? And said, "Oh yeah, he's going to be great on transportation," because they knew that first of all, he's not going to win any elections in Indiana anytime soon because the people there don't like him. But he's just not good at politics. He has never been good at politics. So put him in a transportation role, leave him there. What do you think's coming, Orin? What do you think? What do you think is the new blue wave, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I actually do think that that Michelle Obama is their best option there. But it is a crazy situation. I firmly believe that no one is at the helm, and I think that, as kind of again, as Hapa pointed out, democracy is great at obfuscating accountability, and when you have this kind of loose theocratic oligarchy that we have right now, then a guy like Biden is the best way to obfuscate accountability, because in theory he's in charge, but in practice everyone knows he can't possibly be in charge. He doesn't know where he is, but you don't know who is, and so there's no one to unseat in response to poor governance. And so who's going to slot in here? I mean, Gavin Newsom seems he's got, I guess, the level of polish. They don't really care that his record of results is bad, because that's not really, I mean, they just plan to do that to the entire country anyway. That's already their plan. So the fact that like the results of his policies are poor doesn't really matter to them, because the ideology is the only driving force that could possibly matter. Other than that, yeah, their bench is really weak. You're not going to put Buttigieg in there. You're not going to put Kamala Harris in there. I was firmly sure that they were going to hold on to Biden no matter what. I just didn't think there was any chance that they were going to be brazen enough to try to make this move. But after this comes out, I mean, that's pretty rough. I mean, even if they didn't want to get rid of him, it feels like they kind of have to now. I don't know how you even sell that election other than just screaming "Orange Man's a fascist" the entire time, which is our other strategy. But I mean, really, what else can you do at that point? So I'm not really sure. I mean, I am not so much interested in the horse race of the whole thing as I am in opportunities to show how broken the system is.
Right.
And so in this way, I'm an accelerationist in that whatever shows that the system is fake fastest is the best possible outcome, because the system is unfixable. So whoever gets the left to just completely spin themselves down is the best option.
We need them to eat themselves. But I'm a firm believer. Listen, let old Sleepy Joe go to the old folks home and eat his ice cream till it's time to join Madeleine Albright in Lucifer's temple. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about it. I don't, the guy's obviously off his rocker. There's no way they can sell this anymore. There's no way they haven't been able to sell it to anybody that's even like remotely moderate or in the center for months.
They could probably pass it for another year. Like, the left is delusional enough, but you couldn't pass it for 4 more years after that.
There's no way.
I don't know if he'll live for 4 years.
Yeah, I don't know. He's really bad. That level of dementia is I see that level of dementia I worked in skilled nursing for like a decade, and that level of dementia is like one step under like sundowning and running around the facility, like stealing silverware and shit. Like, it's so close to that. And, on fall risk with like alarm on a bed and shit. Like, he's really that close. If anybody in the medical community will back me up in saying that, he's really that close. Anybody who's worked in like a memory care unit understands that he's not far off. Right. I mean, this whole, like these, people are like, oh, it was just miscues, or he just couldn't read the teleprompter right or whatever. No, dude, like he can't pronounce basic words anymore. I mean, it's getting really, really bad. You can't sell that to the public at large anymore.
Yeah.
Well, if the system was ruled by any kind of visible power, you think the move would be to like put like a Dick Cheney type guy, on the second part of ticket, somebody who's never going to get elected, but you want to actually hold power, and then you just wait till Biden kind of inevitably, kind of croaks off because he's too old, and then that guy, is elevated. But I don't know who they would even put in at this point for that kind of job.
I don't either. And believe me when I say that neocons and the Democrats are not that much different either. I know that the Republicans and Democrats, I'm not one of those libertarians, because I'm a libertarian, right? Like, I work in the Libertarian Party. I know a lot of people would say, oh, you're a Lulbert. Let me tell you, I'm not a fucking Lulbert. I work with the party because I'm trying to use it as a vehicle to get on 50 state media tour and tell people that, you know, this democracy sucks. But I know I'm not one of the lolberts that is like, oh, the Republicans and Democrats are no different. They're exactly the same. It's two birds.
I am not a libertarian, and I'll just say that.
Fair.
Yeah.
But there are, I mean, there are some marketed differences in like, especially like the Republican Liberty Caucus and stuff like that. Like
on the important stuff, they're all the same.
Yeah, I mean, and I say that on the show.
You've got some Rand Pauls, you've got some Thomas Massey.
Yeah, Thomas Massey is an absolute hero. I love that guy to death, right? And there's, you know, some other politicians out there who do good stuff. Mike Lee does some good stuff here and there. I mean, it's not like they're terrible. And I have, you know, I live in the state of Iowa, okay, which by the way has like one of the best state houses in the entire country.
Yeah,
you won't ever convince me.
Jeff Shipley.
Yeah, shout out to Jeff Shipley for being like a Mises, like a hippie Mises Rothbard ANCAP as a Republican getting elected twice. But so like I'm not ever going to say they're different, but I will, you know, I do always say that like the worst bipartisan bills find bipartisan support, right? Like every single time. That's how it works until now, which is like really crazy to me to see, like, you know, this bill to fund Ukraine fail, or the bill to fund Israel fail. I don't think we've ever had a bill to fund Israel that has failed.
Have we ever had a
well, not if Mike Johnson has his way. But yeah.
Have we ever had a bill to fund any sort of military operation, whether our own or someone else's, fail?
Well, the big problem in the United States right now, and has been for you know, almost 20 years now, is the AUMF, right? Like the authorization and use of military force. We've basically given the president like a blank, open-ended check to run conflicts around the world. That's what that is. When we took the power away from Congress, which by the way is their like you know, constitutional duty. I know the Constitution is basically like toilet paper for the people that work in the Capitol now. It doesn't mean a fucking thing. And in fact, maybe it's created, you know, if you take the Spooner approach, maybe it's created the government that we have today. It's at least been powerless to stop it, right? And so they have like a constitutional duty to declare war, and that they've obfuscated to the president,
who gets constantly undermined by the CIA
with an absolutely open-ended spending bill is essentially what it is. And this goes back to the border bill too, right? Like the president has doesn't need a border bill to secure our borders. In fact, it's his constitutional duty, if we're being, you know, if we have an invasion as so it were, right? Like it's the president's duty, constitutional duty, to stop that, right? But it is not, because of the 10th Amendment, his duty to tell a state that they have to open their borders, right? Like there is nothing in the Constitution that says he can tell Texas, like, hey, you're not allowed to have closed borders.
The 10th Amendment hasn't existed since 1960 or 1865, but okay.
Yes. You know what I mean. Yeah. Okay.
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're on the same page here, Orin. Okay, I promise you. But I got to come from a political angle every once in a while.
I mean, it's very clear that you know, Donald Trump didn't know, you know, where his troops were, right? He's the commander in chief. He's supposed to have all this power. It's very clear that he was not running his military, that, you know, the Joint Chiefs just ignored him whenever they wanted to, and then they boasted about it afterwards, like they committed treason, and then they just were like laughing about it in public and bragging about it because they knew they would get a pat on the head from the media. And that's how you can tell we're actually a media-run state instead of a state that's actually run by, you know, any kind of legitimate government, because people feel free to completely violate the Constitution, commit treason, lie to the commander in chief, and then go get their, you know, their rewards from a media that will, you know, elevate them for doing exactly that.
Right. Yeah. I was laughing when Donald Trump got elected. I live in Vancouver, Washington, right across the river from Portland, Oregon. And I like, if you just open the window and put your ear out, you could hear the collective like crying and screaming and screeching like from across the river. I'm not making that up. You could actually hear them screaming. And so like it was really funny to me, as like I had already joined the Libertarian Party and kind of got away from the two parties. Of course I famously didn't like Bill Weld. I think he's a terrible, terrible choice. And obviously I hate him more now as I've grown in my politics. But it was hilarious to me. I was like, dude, this is so funny. If for nothing else, the collective screeching, like, this is beautiful. I love this. Because I had been dealing with Antifa in Portland for years at that point. They used to throw eggs at my car and shit, right? And so I was hopeful. I was a little hopeful. And then one of the first things he did was John Bolton. And I was like, God damn it, dude, seriously, of all the people, that it's like you might as well dug up the corpse of Madeleine Albright and put her in that position, right? Like that's kind of how I felt about it. And so I knew right away that's what was coming. Like it was gonna, okay, there's not gonna be any draining the swamp. This deep state is still gonna run everything, and I was really bummed. And that's kind of my gripe about like Trump too. And I know like people get mad at me for saying that. I'm worried that it's gonna happen again, and then all this uproar about everything is just gonna end up exactly like it was, and probably that's what's gonna happen.
Oh yeah, what's interesting about Trump if he manages to get reelected is not what he will do. It's what will be done to him. It's the fact that the left will lose their mind. They will go insane. They will destroy everything. I mean, we literally are making arguments in front of the Supreme Court about why you have to remove the most popular candidate on the ballot.
Right.
I mean, democracy is over. It's a dead man walking. We're all sitting around here playing a game because we don't know what else to do. But it's very clear that the left is done with any idea that any election that could put someone they dislike into power is legitimate. Like the notion of some kind of peaceful transfer of power to someone who's an actual political opponent of the left is simply not an option for them. And so it's not so much that Donald Trump will go in there and clean house. He can talk about being a dictator for the day. I mean, I hope he, I know that they have, the Schedule F and other things to clean out the bureaucracy and stuff. I hope that those would be things that actually went through, but I don't think any of that's going to happen because I think the left is just going to completely chimp if he ends up getting elected. But I am up against my time here in a little bit, guys. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I will say this though before we get going, because we'll wrap it up here. I want to see what happens if Donald Trump wins for that same exact reason, this peaceful transfer of power, because I want to see them be the ones to go take the guided rope tour of the Capitol and then see what the media does after they do it, because it's coming, right? Like they were already infiltrating capitals and state houses around the country before the January 6th people did it, right?
And they did it after. They did it. Remember when a trans shooter murdered a bunch of kids at a Christian school and then leftists stormed the state capitals of the people whose states were where they were murdered and demanded rights for the trans individual? I mean,
crazy. Absolutely insane. We need to restore some sanity to our United States or let it fail. That's it.
It's screwed because neither side is going to accept the results of the election. 2016, the left didn't accept the results. And then 2020, the right didn't accept the results.
Oh, literally every election of my lifetime since I was a child. No one has ever done
yet.
But it escalated especially.
But because that's what I was saying. I was saying the same thing. People are like, oh,
Bush and Al Gore, man.
That's exactly what I think of every single time. Is like, I remember the pushback to Bush, like it was so huge, and then Obama too. When Obama got
enominated, right? That's the conspiracy theory why he wasn't legitimate, right? Yes. And then the next one's not legitimate. Yeah.
But Bush and Gore, there was like a recount, and people like kind of accepted it. But I mean, 2016, 2020. There was no gradual acceptance. People are still adamant to this day that neither one of those elections were legitimate because the person they hated won.
Well, Auron, we appreciate you coming on, man. I know you're pushed up against time here, but why don't you tell the people where they can find you, listen to you, support you, all those good things.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, Blaze TV. Got the show on the podcast and everything. And then I've got a book coming out people can pre-order. It's called The Total State. We get into all kinds of great political theory, including some of the people we talked about tonight. So if people want to check that out, they can pre-order it now.
Yeah, let me know, dude. I'm a big fan, and I'll definitely read it, and I probably want to help promote it on the show too at some point if we can. Hey, man, I appreciate you taking your time with us and hanging out with us, man. I'm a big fan of your ideas here, and definitely going to be a big fan of your show. So we wish you luck, and we hope to see you again.
Thanks again, man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, if you haven't checked him out yet, please go check out his stuff, man. He's great. I have become recently familiar, but I'm happy that he took. I mean, he's a pretty big commentator at this point, and for him to take the time out to come on our little tiny show here, we really appreciate that. Ryan, you got anything before we get going?
I mean, I was thoroughly impressed, especially with his breakdown of how things actually work and the shift in the 1940s into the managerial state that we're currently in fun fact: the book that he referenced, "The Managerial Revolutions" by James Burham, is the book that I am reading right at this very moment.
Nice,
Yes,
dude.
So you seem to like dive into a like particular author and like read all of Rothbard and then read all of Hop. I bounce between all sorts of people. So
yeah, I'm like extremely autistic about authors. Like if I read an author and I like it captivates me, like I'll read every book they've ever written immediately. Like I've always been like that my whole life, dude. One of the first big like novels I can remember reading was The Watchers by Dean Koontz. Okay. And I was enamored. I could not put that book down. Do you know how many fucking books Dean Koontz has written, dude? And I read all of them. All of them. Like I could not stop, dude. I don't know. I'm autistic about authors. Hey, I want to say to the libertarian extremists, thanks for the $5 super chat. I appreciate it. He said, I bet you $5 they would DDoS the interview. I was wrong. Would Chipper go Birdo? Yeah, because he bet me that they would they would DDoS.
Oh, DDoS it. Yeah,
they would DDoS the interview with Putin, and they didn't.
What would they DDoS? Like the Twitter servers?
Yeah, somehow, yeah.
Like that that would be a huge DDoS.
Well, I think the other big concern too was that there was going to be so many people logged into Twitter at one time, more than maybe ever before, that it would have problems, but it didn't. I mean, it seemed to really run smooth. I think the resolution was a little cucked in the beginning for like the first 30 minutes, but then it got a lot better. So,
you know, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, really. But
Trey Daniel, man, thanks for the $5 super chat. He said, "Awesome show, guys. Glad you had Auron on." I'm glad I had Auron on too. I definitely like have come around to a point where I empathize way more with people like Auron than I do with like my old Lolbert friends. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the truth. I really have gotten to this almost to like the post-libertarian phase, I guess people call it now. I don't know. I have a lot of people on Twitter telling me that I'm not even a real libertarian anymore, which is, you know, it's something I've heard for a long time, but it's way more often now because of my takes on like, you know, religion and abortion and pedophiles. And I'm like, really, dude? Like, do you think libertarianism is all about like killing children and pedophilia and fucking you know, being anti-religionism? And like, no, dude, like you're just a fucking asshole who wants to argue about
there's
shit.
An exception to every rule, and the exception to the non-aggression principle is pedophiles, because they're not human.
Bro, they're not humans. They are absolute cockroaches of the earth, and I don't believe they should have rights, and I mean that. And anybody who thinks I'm less of a libertarian because I think people that physically and sexually harm children don't deserve rights, get fucked. I don't care. I literally don't care what you have to say. Like if you have sympathy for them over the children that they've ruined their entire lives, I don't like you. I don't want you around me. You know what I mean? And I mean that. So like maybe I have become a little less libertarian in some things, but there are things that maybe we need to reevaluate as libertarians, right? Like this whole border issue, right? Like I had a interview the other night with the Christian caucus and the pro-life caucus together, which by the way are two fucking fantastic libertarian caucuses to be part of if you're in the Libertarian Party. These people are espousing very important ideals in libertarianism, in my opinion. But you know, they brought up the border issue, and I said, no, you know, I used to be an open borders guy. And then I realized I'm running to govern a nation. And like, as a libertarian, I understand that like, you know, this whole, well, we're not supposed to have a nation or borders is like a cool, like political theory that I agree with, right? Like at the end of the day, I would love it to have my libertarian utopia where there's no government, people don't find me for not cutting my grass, and just all this dumb shit that we deal with, the taxes and the Federal Reserve and all this stuff. But there's so many of those things that we can chip away at by getting into government, right? But at the same time, like you have to remember that you're running and campaigning to govern a nation of people that mostly want some kind of protection for their property and their civil rights and like the things that matter to them. And one of those things is it's a wildly unpopular position to be an open borders person. Wildly. I'd say less than 10% of the population in the United States actually believes in opening and getting rid of all borders.
Yeah.
Like that's very
like
unpopular
versus
position.
actualized preference.
Right.
you'll have more than 10% say they want open borders, but if you know, they actually were dealing with the consequences of open borders, they would change their tune very quickly.
So I think that as libertarians, we get stuck in these dogmatic utopian ideals sometimes where we forget that like we're kind of the minority still, and we need to, you know, this is why I call myself like the populist America first libertarian candidate. And that's the truth. Like, I think that, you know, if you're going to run to govern a nation, you should be that nation first. And I also believe that people have very real fears that they're worried about. And if you're not going to give a solution to those fears, and instead you're going to beat them over the head with philosophers they've never heard of, then you're not going to get very far. So I think that it's important that we reevaluate some of our positions when it comes to politics. Now, if you want to be an anarchist philosopher, great. Write your utopian ideal dreams out on pages and try to get people to do it. I think people like Larkin Rose, who can get a little Lolberty sometimes, is an important voice because he's woken a lot of people up to agorism and the dangers of central planning. And I think that that's important, and I agree with him. But I don't agree with him politically when it comes to, hey, we need to go out there and tell everyone we're going to take everything away from you. Good luck. Like, I think we have to speak to their fears, and that's populism, right? And so it's, you know, it's just kind of I don't know, I guess a reawakening when it comes to my political views. I think that my platform today for my presidential race at joshuasmith2024.com is a lot more realistic when it comes to libertarian ideals. I also believe that being pro-life is the only consistent libertarian ideal, because you know, you can't say that you can kill another human life and call it consistent with, you know, your non-aggression principle that you literally try to shove down everyone's throat. Anyways, we're getting to the end of this thing. We're going to have some more shows next week, hoping for Tuesday and Thursday. And I think I have this weekend off. So I'm going to be working on our restream so that we can stream to more than just YouTube live. And I talked to the guys at Rumble today. Apparently, I didn't know this, there's some kind of lawsuit going on, and Rumble had to disable their auto sync function. So we have not uploaded a show to Rumble for almost 2 months because I hadn't checked on the page, because I was under the impression that it was just auto syncing. And in fact, since we changed the thumbnail, we have not had a show upload to Rumble. So I have to spend some time tonight uploading shows to Rumble and figuring out our internet issues so that we can start streaming to hopefully Rumble, Odyssey, Twitter, and YouTube. At least those 4 platforms at once. So, Ryan, you got anything before we get going?
Follow me on Twitter at BulldogGamer28. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the show, share it with your friends, share it on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, Truth Social, if you dare use that. Whatever social media
please share our show. It's actually growing again, which is really nice. And we'd really like to get in front of more people. I think that we put on a pretty decent show. I put a lot of time into the production of it, and you know, Ryan sits around and gives us his autistic takes, but he's great at what he does too.
Thumbnails
he makes the thumbnails. He started doing all these great things now for the show. So we're putting a lot of time and energy into trying to bring it back and do more than one show a week and make it a very consistent show. So if you guys wanted to share it, we really appreciate it. Of course, we are in audio form on all podcatchers as well, Apple, Spotify, all those things, Podbean. So you can always just listen to us too. But we're going to be hopefully a live show on at least 4 platforms soon, so you won't just have to watch us on YouTube. Although we do appreciate you coming to YouTube and subscribing and helping us build the
those are the only numbers I can see. So I like to see those numbers go up.
Keep going up. They're going up now. They've been going up.
They are.
Timcast helps. The Timcast bump is good, but it's not as good as you think it would be. You think you'd be like, oh, new 10,000 followers, but no, that's not how it works, dude. So
the Owen Benjamin bump was big for the show.
Yeah, the Owen Benjamin bump was bigger than it had been in a while, for sure.
And then Mr. Toad.
Yeah, Mr. Toad's doing well. We've been having a good time on the show, so we appreciate you guys. I will see you next, hopefully Tuesday, if not for sure Thursday. I'm gonna start hopefully announcing the shows by Monday and promoting them from Monday through Tuesday and Thursday. I love you guys to death. I'll see you Tuesday or Thursday. Until then, don't forget to break cycle.
Due to legal reasons, I just have to explain the lyrics of my last song. may seem to contain a violent call to action in the verse and the frame, but I just landed in Minecraft. The helicopter part was in reference to GTA 5 and the things you do. So any violence you commit, I am not an excuse, because I just landed in Minecraft. Well, Chipper is my friend and he's constantly cold. Accusations of incitement getting totally old. Make your own choices, yeah, you have control, because I just landed in Minecraft. Obviously I would never advocate force, unless there's due process and a trial, of course. And if you're convicted, we will make you a corpse in Minecraft, just in Minecraft. Doing nothing, I mean, you know it. No product theaters, cause it closed for COVID. Holy shit, I think I'm